Welcome back, everybody. We've gotten a lot of requests to cover Danny Mora's Neon Nights. It just celebrated its 3rd anniversary.
Yeah.
And we thought it's honestly the perfect time to take a deep dive, especially for you. You've been wanting us to explore the themes of grief, nostalgia, and perseverance in this album.
Hmm.
And honestly, those themes just feel maybe even more relevant now than they did 3 years ago when it was first released.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got his lyrics, of course, plus some really interesting intro and outro text where he kind of opens up about the themes behind the whole thing. So we're going to be exploring some heady stuff like nostalgia and grief and how he connects those emotions to things like neon lights and nighttime. It's fascinating stuff. So how about we jump right into that intro text? There's a part early on where Mora talks about finding beauty in these unfortunate things, and that really caught my eye. He writes, "There's beauty in the darkness, beauty in the pain and trauma, and beauty in the loss of a loved one. Because only in the pain and trauma do we really get reminded of the fact that we're alive." What do you think about that?
It's interesting how he reframes those ideas, right? Like darkness and trauma. Instead of avoiding them, he leans in and suggests that they actually help us appreciate life more.
Yeah.
Like these difficult experiences kind of jolt us awake and make us really see things. Exactly. It reminds me of this concept called post-traumatic growth. The idea is that people can actually go through tough times and come out the other side with a whole new sense of purpose or even gratitude.
That's a powerful way to look at it. And it seems like that's exactly the lens that Moore is using here. He goes on to say, only when we lose someone do we realize just how special life is, how they were the lights that lit up our paths, how the memories they leave us will continue to be little sparks of light on our darkest days and our darkest nights. And then he adds this line, and it's in those very dark nights that we see the brightest stars, that we appreciate the neon lights of this city. I don't know about you, but that image of neon lights really stuck with me. They're not just in the title track either. They pop up throughout the entire album. Why do you think that is? What do those neon lights represent to him, especially in the context of loss and grief?
Yeah, I think the neon lights are like this key to understanding Mora's emotional world here. They're definitely not just about a city aesthetic or anything like that. They represent something way deeper. Think about it. Neon lights are often associated with nightlife, right? Those places that come alive after the sun goes down. They're artificial, but they still manage to cut through the darkness, almost like beacons.
You know what?
Yeah.
I see what you mean. And maybe for Mora, those lights represent those really vibrant memories, the ones that shine so brightly even though they might be gone now. Kind of like stars in the night sky.
Exactly. Like even though the source itself might not be there anymore, the light from those stars still reaches us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think that idea of searching for light in the darkness really runs through a lot of these songs on the album, like Neon Nights, the song itself. He talks about liking to be alone and only sticking around for a good time but never for a long time, and being found by the ocean surfing vapor waves. There's this feeling of recklessness, almost like he's running from something. But then he talks about being seen when you're driving and you want to misbehave, and lighting up under neon on the beach. He even mentions being found underwater, you just got to hold your breath, an entity discovered only when you're close to death. It's all very interesting. There's this strange mix of wanting to escape and wanting to be found, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. There's definitely a tension there, and I think it reflects the complicated nature of grief. You have that urge to withdraw and isolate yourself, but then at the same time, you need connection. You need someone to see you and acknowledge your pain.
And maybe those neon lights are that fleeting connection for Mora, that momentary spark in the darkness. Like maybe those moments of joy and connection burn even brighter when they're contrasted with loss. And speaking of loss, the song Hymn is just so raw. He sings, "My love, my life, it all died with you. It all broke to pieces. And your windshield too. You were going way too fast." And then there's this image of stereo noise turned to siren sounds in the line, "I still believe that you are around, that your eyes are on me like before. You left me just to fight this war." It's all very powerful stuff.
Yeah, the imagery is so stark and immediate, you can feel the suddenness of the loss. That detail about the stereo turning into sirens is chilling, like the music of their life together was just abruptly cut off.
It's heartbreaking. And that line about still believing the person is around speaks to the power that love and memory have, even in the face of death. It reminds me of what he wrote in the intro about those memories being little sparks of light on our darkest days. But Neon Nights isn't just about dealing with the initial shock of loss. There's also a lot about the nostalgia that grief brings. Like there are a few songs, Kids, The Good Old Days, and Back in Time, that really capture this yearning for the past. They all seem to tap into this desire for simpler times, lost connections, and maybe even a version of ourselves that we miss.
It's really interesting how Mora portrays nostalgia in these songs. It's not just sentimental longing. It's almost like a coping mechanism, a way to deal with the pain of the present.
Exactly. Like in Kids, he talks about rolling with the top down and that beautiful beach town. We were kings and queens and getting wasted by the tower, thinking we had the power, getting faded, smoking green. There's just this sense of youthful abandon, living in the moment.
Right. And I think he's contrasting that carefree energy with how he's feeling now in his grief.
He even sings, "Look at the kids. It's like looking at yesterday. Feels like a destination that's miles away." He knows he can't go back. Yeah. But there's this yearning for that lost innocence.
And maybe that's where the neon lights come back in. They represent that time when life felt brighter and more vibrant.
Right. Like he's searching for those same feelings in the present, even though he knows it's impossible to really go back to the past.
It's like he's trying to illuminate the present with the glow of the past. It's like he's clinging to those memories, trying to make them last.
Yeah. And that desire to recapture what's been lost, it seems to fuel a lot of the escape themes in Neon Nights, like in Tequila Sunrises, for example. It's all about getting lost in the moment, the music, the energy of a beach party. He sings about Coronas in the ice and cruising with the top down and just doing stupid shit in Vallarta. It's like he's inviting us to escape with him and forget about everything for a little while.
And the way he describes those experiences, it's so vivid. You can almost feel the heat and taste the tequila and hear that pulsating house music.
Totally. But even in the middle of all that sensory overload, there's this undercurrent of urgency. Like he's desperate to grab onto these moments of joy before they slip away. He even sings, "Life is too short, you don't get refunded, live it like you like to vida loca."
I think that's a big part of how nostalgia works, especially when it's tied to grief. It gives us a way to briefly revisit those feelings, those moments of intense joy or connection, even if the source of those feelings is gone.
It's like those memories become even more precious because they're all we have left. And that feeling of loss of something precious slipping away, it's even more pronounced in Leaving Paradise. This time, the escape is more literal. It's about physically leaving a place that's become too painful.
California, which he calls paradise, becomes the symbol of everything he needs to get away from.
He sings, "California was never my home. In California, I'm always alone. It's a mirage, like a movie scene. You see yourself as you want to be slipping into insanity." Like the place has become a prison, a constant reminder of what he's lost.
Yeah. And leaving becomes an act of self-preservation. It's like he's breaking free from a cycle of pain and disillusionment.
Like he's saying, "I can't stay here surrounded by these ghosts of the past. I have to create a new space for myself, even if it means leaving everything behind."
Right. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. How the most familiar places can become the most painful after a loss. Every corner holds a memory. Every street echoes with laughter that you can't hear anymore.
It's in those moments that you realize how deeply connected our environments are to our emotions and our sense of self. And then there's "I lost myself," which takes this idea of escape to a whole other level. This time he's not lost in a physical place. He's lost within himself. Lost in grief and darkness and the void left by the person he loved.
He sings, "I dream with my eyes wide open. I live with my eyes closed shut." It's like he's emotionally numb, going through the motions without really being present.
Like a ghost haunting his own life.
And he knows it's taking a toll on him. He sings, "Living in the dark has been getting hard. Anonymous soul is a superstar. Living in denial isn't really my style. Here comes my time to finally smile."
There's a hint of hope there, right? Like he's realizing he needs to face his pain if he wants to heal.
Definitely. And the repetition of, "I lost my lover. I lost myself. At what price?" shows the cost of bearing his grief and trying to escape the truth of what happened.
Like he's finally understanding that true healing means facing the darkness, not running from it. So we've seen him grappling with these really intense emotions, seeking escape in all these different ways, and finally realizing that he needs to find some inner truth. But Neon Nights isn't just about darkness and loss. There are also these moments of tenderness and vulnerability, and a really raw exploration of love.
You're right. There's this undercurrent of love that runs through the whole album, even in the midst of all the grief and longing.
We were rolling with the top down in that beautiful town. We were kings and queens, getting wasted by the tower, thinking we had power, getting faded, smoking green.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Neon Nights. We've really been exploring some heavy emotional territory with Danny Mora so far, like loss and grief and escape and all the complicated stuff that comes with love. Now, as we get towards the end of this album, I'm wondering how he kind of brings it all together. How does he reconcile those contrasting themes of darkness and light, the pain and the beauty?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is how he uses music itself as a way to work through all these difficult emotions. It's like he's creating this sonic landscape that reflects his journey.
You're right. It's not just the lyrics. It's the music itself that evokes such strong feelings.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Like you have those moments of intense energy and driving rhythms, and then you have these softer, more melancholic melodies. It all seems to mirror the ups and downs of what he's experiencing.
And speaking of emotional intensity, there's one song we haven't mentioned yet that I think is super important to understanding Mora's overall message, Supernova. This one feels almost transcendent, wouldn't you say? Like a combination of everything we've talked about.
Absolutely. Supernova really brings together those themes of loss and yearning and the search for meaning. It's powerful.
It's interesting you say powerful because he actually compares this love he's singing about to a supernova. He says, like a supernova, you are the end and the beginning of me. Like a supernova, I will burn bright for all the stars to see.
That's such vivid imagery. A supernova is this incredible force of destruction, but it also creates something new.
Right, like it leaves behind this trail of stardust.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what grief can do too. It can shatter you, but it can also leave behind these beautiful, luminous fragments of memory.
I love that. And in the song, Mora seems to be acknowledging both the destructive and creative forces of this love. He sings, "You've been the very best, an obsession so lethal. Now that you're gone, I know why hurricanes are named after people."
There's this raw honesty in those lyrics. He's not afraid to face the pain.
No, he's confronting it head on, and I think that's what allows him to see the beauty in the wreckage, to find the light even in the darkness.
And that brings us to the album's outro, where Mora reflects on his journey and offers this message of hope. He writes, "You have seen my love, you have seen my life, and you've seen my sadness, all as bright and vivid as the neon lights I sing about."
It's like he's acknowledging the full spectrum of his experience, the darkness and the light, and he's embracing it all.
He goes on to say, "I wanted to do something that had duality. I want to make something that highlights the human experience, because just like in movies, there's death and love and happiness and despair." He's not trying to make things seem better than they are. He's showing us the real, raw truth.
And I think that's ultimately what makes Neon Nights so powerful. It reminds us that we're not alone in our pain and our struggles. Even in our darkest moments, there's still beauty to be found and connections to be made and a little bit of hope to guide us through.
That's a great way to put it. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to that image of neon lights cutting through the darkness. It's been such a strong theme throughout our conversation. It's like a reminder that even when we're surrounded by darkness, there's still a way to find our way back. So as you all navigate your own journeys through those neon nights of life, remember Mora's message. Embrace both the good and the bad, trust the process, and never stop looking for the light. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Neon Nights. We'll catch you next time.
I need to be me again. I need to come up with a better plan. Something new I need to discover. Something that I need to recover. Go back to colors. Go back to colors.